Hi there, my name is Spencer Pitts. I'm the Chief Technologist for the Digital Workspace here in the UK, but also looking after Europe, Middle East and Africa. And I'm going to talk to you today about the onboarding of your future-ready workforce. So firstly, thanks for having me at this great event. Did a session about 2 years ago in person, and hopefully next year I'll be able to do that as well. So with everything that's been going on at the moment, we think there's an opportunity for companies to kind of reappraise how they do or look after their employees, how they employ them, and more importantly, with everybody potentially being what we call a distributed workforce now, no longer physically always located in one building, although maybe at some point we'll be able to return to work properly and then, see people face to face in the office. But what one thing is definitely for certain is that the concept of how we employ people, where they go to work, how we look after them, what that work experience looks like going forward is going to change. And we think that now that everybody is distributed pretty much, there's an opportunity to change how we look after them, but in specifically this session, how we onboard them. Because if you think about traditional onboarding of how we get somebody into a company, how we look after them day one when they first walk through the building, that no longer applies in today's world based on where we are. And like I said, going forward, it's probably not going to return to how it was. So, what do we do going forward? How can we streamline that? How can we make a better experience? And technology, we believe, is going to form a major part of that. And specifically here, a great solution that we unveiled as part of VMworld recently is the Workspace One onboarding solution. But before I get into that, I just want to lay a little bit of the scene in terms of, where does this fit into the Workspace One platform? I talked about Workspace One just a second ago. What is Workspace One? Well, Workspace One is, for many, a mobile desktop management solution. For others, it's a Windows 10 management solution. For others, it's how you get access and to all of your apps across multiple devices. And the truth is, it's all of those. But where we're going with this is making it more into a platform that allows you to look after your employees, specifically how you engage with your employees and how they engage back with you as a company. Clearly IT need to look after that platform in terms of getting access to the services and the devices that you and your employees will get access from, but we believe there's an opportunity there to modernize how they do that, orchestrate and automate. And then as we go forward, a lot of people are now considering that the traditional security methods that they used when everybody, pretty much was inside a physical workplace, and we felt people working remotely was the minority, not the majority. The security model was very much that we tunneled into the data center and then came back out to get access to our SaaS services and our cloud services. We believe that no longer makes sense in today's world given where we are. So a zero trust based approach we think is fundamental. And when we look at Workspace One, it covers all of those. It covers, looking after everybody from when they join the company, making sure that IT has everything they need to be as optimal as possible, but at the same time putting in this concept of a zero trust brokering solution at the heart of it. However, I said that some people think it's an MDM solution. It is, right? It's a very good MDM, a very good Windows 10 and device management solution. In fact, it goes a lot further than that. It also looks after other device types, things like workplace IoT, wearables, etc. But a lot of our customers start from one of these places, and a lot of them, we believe, it's an ability to kind of take the base model or the base building blocks here and then build upon them. So if you came from the traditional AirWatch side, you can add these capabilities I'm going to talk about on top of that. You can start from there and build up into this picture. If you came from the VDI and the Horizon side, you've got some customers that have had both of those and just had them in separate departments before. But the concept of bringing it together around an intelligent access services solution, so you will know this hopefully as Workspace One Access. It's our kind of identity and access management solution that ties together, how you access from devices, how you access your virtual desktops, and then lastly, with the acquisition of Carbon Black, but also integration in with third parties, we now can look after the endpoint in a secure fashion, even more so than what we used to before. And we have those tightly integrated solutions with Carbon Black and Workspace One. So they would be, if you think about, say, 3-4 years ago, a lot of people consider this to be a digital workspace from an IT perspective. Obviously, there'd be good user experience here, but when we went to customers, they say, well, yes, I have device management, or I'm looking at device management, I'm looking at a virtual desktop solution, hopefully Horizon, of course, and then I may have some access services. But if I put them all together, a lot of people would consider that to be, yep, that's a digital workspace. And it probably was 4 or 5 years ago, but the concept of this now going forward is the fact that actually it's no longer just about that. It needs to be about bringing it to the next level. Just because I can manage the device, I need to be able to make sure that your user has self-service. They can do things like approvals. There's a lot of kind of interaction automatically that doesn't necessarily mean physical or manual input from, say, HR or support. And we should be able to, and I'm going to get into the main point of this session around onboarding, automate, and make sure that that experience is the best possible when somebody joins a company. And then in terms of IT modernization, making sure that we have the right visibility as and when we start looking after more devices and people are more remote than what they used to be. The ability to have visibility and automation and put something in there that means that machines are automatically up to date in terms of compliance is even more important than when we were all mostly based out of a physical location. And then zero trust security, I talked about this briefly before, but now even more so, the fact that we've got devices and people and applications spread all over the world in different locations, not just confined to a nice secure perimeterized physical location in the same way we did 10-15 years ago. The ability to kind of have real-time visibility on what's going on with those devices, having conditional access based on certain rules, having up-to-date threat response and risk analytics is really, really important. But the key to this, though, is the fact that you can't do those kind of stuff or those kind of actions that I just talked about without some powerful intelligence and automation engine built into the platform. And this is the bit we believe that kind of elevates it from a great digital workspace solution 5 years ago that customers are on this journey for, but bringing it to the next level. And then fundamentally having a machine learning and automation engine built in, which came from a previous acquisition that we've now embedded into the platform, allows us to do these things that I mentioned around onboarding and around the employee engagement. And there's a lot more capability here that I urge you, if you have a chance, to go and have a look at. But today, for this session, we're going to focus mostly on the onboarding part of the platform, which, as you can see from here, is particularly focused on lines of business, how they employ people, how they go out there and get the best talent, working with HR, because clearly when you onboard a new employee, HR need to be involved. And then obviously we want to make sure that we're touching on the needs of the employer themselves. And the reason why I put this up here is no longer is it just a platform when we go out and speak to customers that's purely aimed at IT. We're now covering a lot more of the business and making sure that the platform here is looking after the requirements across multiple factors, not just as we used to, speak to IT alone. Not that they're not important, but as we go forward, it's a lot more people in the wider part of the company. And so let's take a closer look at employee engagement, and specifically, as I said, around how we can automate that entire process from when you first sign your contract or you do your interview with a company. And we think that having a proper platform that you can engage with, and that isn't just launching applications, although that's important, but a two-way interaction that you can do or have your employees do with the company is really, really important. And you'll see that those capabilities now have been put into Workspace One. So when I say onboarding, we kind of break it down into three main areas here. So day zero, some might argue it should be called -1, is before somebody actually physically joins a company. So that, as I said, might look like everything that's happened from the point that they do their interview to the point that they get accepted, or they say, yes, I'm happy with the contract, please send me everything that I need to do to start completing everything prior to getting on board. And then on day one, there's a specific thing you need to do. It's access, it's making sure you have a device, all of those things. And I'm going to talk you through, with the aid of some videos in a second, how we can really specifically focus on those two main parts of an onboarding requirements for companies. We're not going to get into it today, but there are other and a lot more capabilities, I would say. as and when people are using the solution day in, day out, all the way through to potentially if they leave the company, and whether they truly leave. And what I mean by that is sometimes that they may still have access to certain systems like, finance, in terms of pensions and some medical benefits through HR as well. So just because they've left the company doesn't mean they still don't need access to certain things. And when we look at those, there's three main pieces we believe that make up a truly successful kind of employee life cycle and how you look after them. Obviously the technological piece is important, and that's what we're going to take you through today, but there's two other bits, and then some things we can control, some things we can't. Maybe the physical location is something we may be able to control more in the future, but history has now told us that we can't necessarily look after that in the same way we did before. And cultural is one of those things that we can kind of push from the top, and maybe we can put in things with companies and get communities going, but ultimately culture is something that kind of just happens and kind of grows over time. The key point here though is that technology kind of brings that all together. We can impact cultural aspects with a great, what we believe is an employee-based workspace platform. We can help some of the physical aspects of work through the platform as well. Although we can't control those two, we can definitely control the technology, and we can definitely have an impact on both cultural and physical. So if you haven't seen it before and you think, why Spencer keep talking about Workspace One? Well, it is the thing that ultimately drives a lot of what I just talked about in that platform, and this is what the end user would see. They have a consistent experience for all their applications across all their devices, all the ones that you may say that the user's allowed to use, whether they're corporate owned or whether they're bring your own, and I'll talk about that more later. But the ability for them to go in here, get things like single sign on to all their apps, whatever those apps are, whether they're physical, mobile, SaaS, traditional, virtual, doesn't really matter. They should just go in here and get access to them. And that concept's been around for a while now. The latest pieces we've brought to the table here is having the ability for people to do more, I would say, intelligent self-service through the likes of an automated virtual assistant chatbot integration. The ability to ask for remote assistance, so somebody can come along from IT to take control of the machine or walk the end user through a particular problem, build into it. They should be able to go in there and also do quick actions. And what does that mean? Well, maybe there's a very simple thing that they need to do every day in their job. Why not build that workflow directly into Workspace One hub, and then the user can just simply pick off that workflow. And then, as you're going to see here, really important, how does HR get involved, and what about company communications? So Workspace One Intelligent Hub now becomes a place that you can broadcast information. It might be an update message around returning to work. It might be, please go and sign all of your compliance or health and safety. Whatever it might be, corporate communications, typically we use things like email, but there's an ability here to actually use that as a send it out to everybody, and making sure that the user actually does something about it afterwards. And then integrated in would be, what about your global address list? Can I see everybody? Which is particularly important when somebody, especially at the moment, who's not physically going to go into the office, how do they get to know some of their employees when they first start? And this is all wrapped up into what we call the Workspace One Intelligent Hub. Hub, because it allows you to integrate in with multiple other things that isn't just accessing apps only, but as I mentioned, other integrations to other systems. And intelligent because we believe there's a way of making it a lot better for the end user and getting visibility to it at the back end as well. So what about that onboarding then? Well, we believe think about a typical process here, and there's some kind of thing that happens after you say yes, I want to join the company. Maybe you kick off some email typically, or maybe there's a manual process that somebody has to sign something. Somebody then goes and fills in some forms, which goes off to HR. Maybe there's some physical stuff that comes or gets delivered directly to your house. Maybe there's a some kind of telephone call just before somebody joins. There's a lot of probably manual things. Now, some of those I would argue are still important. Face-to-face type interaction would be really, really ideal in a perfect world, but given where we are, not probably so easy at the moment. All the way through to actually, do we need to get some devices ready? What we typically see is some of those processes means that people don't actually get a device or up and running until weeks after they join. even more so when think about third parties and contractors. We typically see there's an issue there. And then lastly, what about all of those pre-rec type training and compliance type things that you might need to do and read this before you join? There's an opportunity here to automate a lot of this stuff. And then actually on day one, getting a full digital workspace that you can now access all of your apps, making sure the devices are ready, any further apps that you need to look after. These are the things that we've actually built into the solution right now. And it's GA as from about 2 months ago. We launched it at VMworld. So what does it look like? So this is a video that we showed at VMworld, but I put some more detail into it. So we showed a shorter version. But effectively it talks about what I just said, all the way through from when you first join or say yes to joining that company. An automated email could be sent directly to you, and I'm going to take you through how this would get created in a second from the back end. But you can design all of this. You can kick off the first workflow, and in this case, because they're needing to kick off the workflow and onboarding process, we need to make sure that it's secure. So you can embed two-factor authentication in. And the very first thing might be, go and get the Workspace One Intelligent Hub. Use that two-factor authentication, in this case RSA, to get access. And then here's some pre-onboarding type applications you're going to need and some workflow. One of them could be integration with Workday to kick off some some prereqs to verbally say that or e-signatures for your actual contract itself. Then go in here, it might be that you need to order a device. So built in could be the concept of kicking off a workflow to go and buy a device. Could be in this case as well looking at a CEO type message that's broadcast to everyone before they join, talking about the ethics and the thinking of the company. And then that's fine, but as I just said, what about some of those workflows? Now, you could just literally get them to type in or put in a particular workflow, or you can get them to actually talk in using the virtual assistant, and this is what we're showing here. Built in is a chatbot integration, which is either text-based or NLP, and that can kick off some of those workflows. And what you just saw there was a device being ordered through ServiceNow, so a direct integration with ServiceNow that kicks off a pre-existing workflow. And then here could be, okay, well, there's some content you need to read before you join, maybe some kind of tips and tricks, so you can even make sure that that content is delivered to them directly. And then on day one, this is when they now start getting access to their systems. Here's some of the key apps that they will require on day one, but there's some other new apps that they may or may not need. And here's the team that they could be working with. Where's their direct reports, where do they sit, where's their contact details. So this is the direct integration again, maybe with your global address list through Active Directory or maybe other third-party directory solutions or through HR. And then after that, they can go in, okay, they've got a device here, but what you're going to see is they might want to, look at other devices that they can use prior to their device arriving. So that's great. They've kicked it off using their personal iPad in this case, but what does that physical corporate device look like? But as you can see here, we can automate a lot of those processes really nicely and give a great user experience. But in terms of the actual physical device, now at that point, depending on the device they ordered, we can have that physically shipped to their home address. And then what we do in VMware as well is, if you're a new starter, we've actually got a box that goes around the actual, in this case it's a Dell, it could be a Mac. We have a box that goes around it, and it's all branded and some simple instructions on the back to get somebody up and running on day one. But the key point here is they don't have to come into the office unless you really want them to. It can be shipped directly to their doorstep. All they have to do is unbox the device, put in some upfront authentication and credentials and maybe two-factor authentication, fill in some simple steps, and then the machine starts building. Now, if there's lots of apps that need to be pre-staged, we can do that as well. And by the way, this works directly with, now obviously Dell has been around for a while, but as part of VMworld we also talked about HP and Lenovo. So you can go out to those guys and also through the partner network that interact with them, such that you can have devices pre-staged, some of the base builds already on there, so that when it actually hits the end user's desk at home, they're not sitting there waiting for everything to build. They can be up and running in minutes. In fact, actually, if you ever get the chance to do a virtual briefing center, tour, maybe when things return to normal-ish, physically come to the office. We do this as part of the demo, and we sometimes have little races between people to see how quickly they can onboard certain devices. And I think in Palo Alto, one of the records is about 3 minutes at the moment, from unboxing to setting up to getting them operational with some of their first apps. So, a lot of people, when they think about onboarding, focus on the device. It is important, as I just mentioned, but it isn't the only thing. And in combination with what I just showed you before, but also the device piece, putting those two together is quite a compelling kind of onboarding story. But as you probably noticed, I talked about some third-party stuff there. I talked about ServiceNow. I think I talked about some HR Workday in this case. And you're probably thinking, well, that's great, but how does that integrate? Well, the point here is actually we have relationships with not just internal technologies. Some of this stuff will require third-party integration. So out the box, we have things like Slack, ServiceNow. We talked about a virtual assistant that was using IBM Watson, although we are increasing some of the virtual assistant capabilities with other solutions. Things like Coupa, which is kind of like a finance approval, SAP Concur, I'm sure everybody's aware of. And when we think about physical coming to the office, we have an integration with HID, who's a door entry system. So you can use your phone once it's registered to kind of get access seamlessly. And then going forward, we'll be building out capability around things like surveys, so that you can embed them into the communication part. So, and also corporate comms, how do you send out automatic information or I guess updates to people. I talked about kind of a corporate, you need to fill in this particular compliance training, but maybe you can send out directed Slack messages or Teams. So some of those integrations are here today, out the box, ready to go. And as I said, we're improving them as we go forward. But it's important to note that what you just saw onboarding wise is if you like, an aggregator of these services, bringing them together and a kind of automation umbrella around them and giving the best experience ultimately at the heart of it. Okay, so that's kind of the rhetoric, and then you may be thinking, so what do I need? Okay, I want this. Maybe I'm already a VMware customer. Maybe I'm looking at this. So what do I need? Well, if you want to do the out-the-box experience, clearly you're going to need some kind of unified endpoint management, Workspace One UEM. If you just want to do the application side, single sign-on, SaaS apps, etc., and you don't need to actually physically ship a device, you don't need, therefore, to use Workspace One UEM. You just need Workspace One access, which is the second piece to here. This will give you the access to some of those SaaS apps and some of those pre-onboarding kind of workflows beforehand. If you want to get, employee experience, and there's another piece that we haven't covered today around actually understanding what that is and giving it a score, you're going to need our Workspace One Intelligent Hub and Hub services. And then if you want to integrate into the third-party solutions I talked about, you're going to need mobile flows. So they are the four main components, the first one being optional based on how far you go with this. So what are the simple steps? Well, there's some things you need to do from Active Directory, obviously. If you've got Active Directory groups, you don't need to create the actual individual user, but you need to make sure that the group is already there. And you're going to see in a second there's a template that you can actually create inside the onboarding solution. And you can have multiple templates for different kind of onboarding groups, which could align to, I guess, different departments, if you like, as well. You're going to need to think about the apps that they're going to need pre-hire, but also when they join on day one. And that is a simple task if anybody's used to looking at assignments of how you do that today with Workspace One. That's an extension of that as well. And then you need to think about some of the customization and the comms. So there's a comms builder that's now built into the solution that I'll show in a second. But some of that you're going to need beforehand, because obviously before somebody joins they're going to need to be told what they need to do in order to complete the onboarding process. And optional, you might want to put in the virtual assistant that I talked about. That isn't something that we supply ourselves. That is a third-party integration. That is all documented how you do it. But just to let you know that you don't just buy this and the virtual assistant comes as part of it. You need to integrate that with your third-party solution. And these are the templates I talked about, and inside there you can customize it. I talked in the video about the look and feel. That can all be customized. How you put in the virtual assistant as well. once you've got the template, you can replicate those for different departments and different onboarding groups. But very simple, wizard-driven process. And I talked earlier about, I guess, bring your own and contractors to a degree. And some people are probably thinking, okay, this is all great for onboarding if it's somebody that's going to be full-time. What about people that are just there for a couple of months? Well, maybe you don't need to give them everything I just showed you. You don't have to give them a full-blown device. Maybe we just set them up access to certain apps that's relevant for their contract or for their guest tenure for the duration of that period. And that's where you can get into things like bring your own. I think it's a really important use case. And we have everything from Workspace One, Boxer, Secure Web, what we call our containerized or productivity apps, which integrate in with the likes of Office 365. There's a concept of registered mode, which is really important for people that are already managed and they maybe have a device that's managed by their own company, but they're coming into work, third-party contract, but have to, or subcontract and have to work with you. How do you still give them access to certain apps without managing the device? So registered mode is a new or recently new addition. And then of course we can, if it's your own device where you don't want anybody to manage it yet, which is probably important in that pre-onboarding phase, there's now capability with iOS, and it has been for a while with Android Enterprise. And then finally there's a full-blown, when they actually day one, it's a corporate owned or an employee owned, but they want it to have extra access. You now have the ability, or have for a while, to have full device management, but slightly different in terms of enterprise and full device wipe capabilities. So really important there. Right, having said all of that, I thank you very much for your time. I hope that was interesting. If you want to think about where you go from here, so there's some assets that you can go and have a look at straight away. And there's something called the Workspace One User Adoption Kit. So if you're thinking about, okay, the tech's one thing, but how do I actually get this out to my users? There's a whole pack, in effect, that talks about how you would take this project out, not just from a physical, technical perspective, but some of the, the marketing type, communications, education, how do you internally promote it? How would you support it going forward? And then more from the tech side, if you're interested in learning more, want to go and play with this, go and set it up, get your hands-on labs. Here's all the places to go and do that now. And then finally, if you've got any other questions, please don't bombard me completely, but if I can't answer them, I'll definitely find some people that can. So I'll go away and do that, but please let me know if you have any more follow-up questions. And then maybe one day, we'll be back in physical touch with each other. Maybe I'll be at a Define Tomorrow event, in front of everybody down in Bristol somewhere with Barry and the team. But until then, thank you very much, and thanks for taking the time to listen to me today. Thank you all. Stay safe. Speak soon.